Hi and welcome to Dynamics Update. This is not one of the release notes episodes. This is actually one of the interview episodes. And today we have a special guest with us. So apart from the guest, I have, of course, Gustav with me as usual.
Hello.
So he doesn't need any introduction. He's just here always. But with us as a guest, we have Fredrik Saetre from Microsoft.
Welcome.
Hi, Fredrik.
Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me on, guys. And congratulations on your half marathon, Johan. That was amazing.
Very well done, Johan.
Yeah. Thank you. It was long, so that's okay.
Halfway there. That's good.
Yep.
That's really cool.
All right. So please, Fredrik, introduce yourself a little bit.
So I work at Microsoft, and I'm what we call a technology specialist manager. So I'm heading up the pre-sales resources for the enterprise unit. I've worked with Dynamics for the last, now 15 years, I guess. Earliest version, I guess, I touched was 3.0. So not an OG, but fairly long in the game.
Yeah.
I was an MVP for a couple of years before I started at Microsoft. And I'm just like really into the features and functions of the platforms and ability to kind of extend it, and really enthusiastic about all the technology and how that can kind of better the everyday life for the users. Yeah.
It's nice to have you aboard.
Yep. So when you and I talked before the podcast, we actually got some subject suggestions that you had opinions about. So
yes, I'm known for my opinions.
Opinions are good. I also tend to have a lot of them. They are not always correct, but I can argue for them. And if someone argues better, then I can agree that I was wrong. So that's okay.
Hopefully makes for good listening as well. That's good.
I'm very, very confident until I'm proving wrong. So and being with Tommy on our podcast, it was always like, no, Fredrik is not like that. And there might be some really technical guys out there who probably want to correct me on some of these. So I'm a bit generic in it in some of the areas, and there are finer aspects of it because there's always a better explanation that we can give.
Of course.
But that's the life of a salesperson, right? We tend to be able to do it all in general, and then somebody else has to
stretch it a
deliver.
bit. Yeah, that's a good disclaimer. Great. Yes. I think you, Johan, yourself told me once that you should never interrupt or should never destroy a good story with facts. When I fact checked you.
No, exactly. So. Don't let facts stand in the way of a good story.
Yeah, so we'll try to let it slide.
And one of the things that I think lately for me, and when we talked about the topics, right, it was this multi-tenant hashtag multi-tenant that's kind of propagating around. And I saw one of the topics that I just answered right before you asked me about topics was this IFS, that ERP in the cloud doesn't have to be like non-extendable, or you can't. You just have to live with the standard, right? And that's something that really triggers me. And so, and being in sales, that's sort of like one of the things that we tend to do a lot of arguing about, right? Architectures and all of these things. So yeah, that's my topic for today, architecture.
Yeah, I mean that's also one of the things that I've been discussing a lot, because I mean my perspective on this is that if you don't have very good arguments, multi-tenant and multi-instance is probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
There are of course situations, but the answer is generally no.
Yeah, and multi-instance, I mean, that would be in the cases where we see a lot of, because we can have multi-instances per tenant, but that would be if you have different industries and there's overlap, and you can't do that. And I've seen some really good applications for it, because to solve some of the issues in regards to data replication and multi-finance and so on. But it is like a special case type of scenario.
So I mean, in your line of work, I mean, what's your most common argument for like getting in that discussion about multi-tenant?
So for me, multi-tenant is like some of our competitors, and I this is what I do. I love looking at our competitors and how they are weaker than us, because I think we have from an architecture perspective. Yeah, because from an architecture perspective for the ERP side, I mean, having a single tenant public cloud offering is the best. And my reasoning behind that is because if you look at the history of ERP, we can go back 50 years until the start, right? The bare beginnings. There's always been customization and extensions. There's never one single ERP that will work for complex industries. If you go into like hair care, or you're having a barber shop, or you're maybe an electrician and a small company that does that, or you're learning somebody to drive or do these types of things. I've seen some ERP that are really, really extremely vertical, and that's fine. But for a manufacturing or a professional service company, there's always these commercial aspects that kind of, it doesn't really fit into that. So coming as a sort of like a global ERP vendor, coming in with a standard one size fits all out of the box industry vertical solution for every geolocation, that
it's been a tough
I've never seen that happen. Yeah. So when they come in at us, they say, I think this is going to be a swing, and you can arrest me on this, let's say 2 years now, because we're going to see some people go for these multi-tenant architecture components. And SAP is clear on that as well. They talk about keep the core clean, and keep the core clean is fine, but what they mean is like you do your extension somewhere else. And so they start with these add-on platforms. And then we're talking about a different type of system as opposed to the system of record.
Yeah.
And then it's same with Infor and some other solutions as well. It's like, we can publish a multi-tenant solution. You have to be on the train. We're doing monthly updates. We're doing all of these things. And then they're selling it as like a low-cost thing. And they're not taking into account testing and proper application lifecycle management. Because if you're on multi-tenant, you're going to have to comply with their schedule, and you can't do that. So having that single tenant doing an upgrade skip because maybe you're in an audit or you're doing something else, that opportunity, and from a risk perspective, is just awesome. And what they're saying then, because they don't have public cloud single tenant architecture, they're saying, well, you either do multi-tenant or you do a private cloud single tenant. And that is where the cost comes in, because then you have to do system updates and you have to do your monitoring of the actual hardware and doing all of these things. You can do it in cloud, that's fine, but it's still a single tenant private cloud. And that's when the costs occur. Yeah. And that's, I think, is kind of the primary win for us, this single tenant public cloud. Cool. And they're not talking about it because they don't have it. Yeah.
So I understand what you mean. I completely agree with the reasoning or the experience that whenever you go vanilla or like pure standard, because even though back in the day it was always it's selling like you can customize, but it's been for a while like, okay, customizations are bad, standard is good.
Yes.
From a cost driving perspective.
So is cloud going to solve that?
Exactly. Yeah. About the you going full standard, it leads to microservices or custom applications popping up like mushrooms, because there are real business scenarios that you need to solve. So going strict vanilla doesn't solve anything either. You have to like find a way to resolve it.
You have to make concessions somewhere.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Are you going to do that on the architecture and then make these things in other technologies? And you can do it on a low-code platform, but is that the way to go now? I think some cases are good for low-code, but if you like have a warehouse process that is very, very unique and you want to add some value.
It's not, perhaps. No. No, I completely share that. It's efficiency enhancing. I would say it's a lot of cool stuff can be done, but like you say, if you have a like low latency requirement, like business critical scenarios, maybe not the low-code platform is the way to go to solve that one. But there are different applications, of course.
And I love reference the Gartner architecture or the pace layout architecture in that case. And if you look at the pace layout architecture and then you put some boxes underneath, I have a slide that does this, and it's sort of like the system of record, right? That is finance and operations. And then you have your system of differentiation, where you have a higher propensity of doing sprints, and it's a shorter life cycle of the applications. The implementation time is a lot quicker, and that is sort of like Dataverse and the Dataverse applications that we have. So it's sales, field service, and all of these applications. And then you have your system of innovation, and that is the Power Platform and the way that you can implement these things. So
that's really cool.
And that's a differentiation for us. Yeah.
So, but on that note, there was another topic we discussed before. I mean, the Dataverse, me and Johan coming from F&O, right? I mean, especially I'm an old developer as well, coming from AX 2009. I also touched the 3.0 version. That was my earliest one, at least. So coming from that platform, from the data model, going into Dataverse. Previously, I mean, Common Data Service as well was like, okay, cool. How does this work? Why is this table not called Venn table? It's called something else, and it's not a table. So pretty big transition coming from ERP side. Now it's more. It's part of the solution, right? Or it's actually built on top of. You can define it or discuss it how you want. But Dataverse, what's your take on Dataverse and the future for it, and how it fits in the ERP platform from Dynamics perspective?
Yeah, I like. There are some concessions you have to do when you look at these models, and it has to do with sort of like where we want to innovate on top of. If you go into and the ease of this, right? If you go into to somebody who is working as a, sort of like a super user, and you want them to extend or use the customer data, right? I think it's in the party model that we have inside of F&O, we're talking about 26, maybe even 50 tables, right? It's really normalized. Yeah. And then we have the customer v3 entity, which is the denormalization of that, which then represents the same customer entity or the account entity inside of. And there's some concession. There's always an issue there, and I've seen some of the aspects now kind of where we will move CE to more of a and I know you've talked about this, to more of a sort of like a party model where you have this, and in some cases that makes sense, right? Because in some industries, and it may be inside of engineering, or you're doing some service industries, you don't have one customer with just 2 addresses, right? You have 25 addresses, or you have more complexity, and that model supports that. So you're doing some concessions, but what it does bring to the table is a sort of like a layer where you can much more easily start these extensive processes that ends up as a sales order, or as a project timesheet journal, or some type of expense journal, something like that. So you can build these front-end systems, and I think the Dataverse platform is extremely malleable, especially when you look at, again, the pace-layered architecture from the system of differentiation type of column in there. Yeah,
I mean, you can always almost look at it as an API layer, or like an integration platform. That's where you can do the changes, the modifications, and the interface changes, but you can keep the main system intact instead.
Yeah, from an API layer side, right? If you want to do interactions, if you replicate something or use DualWrite, like DualWrite is used in some areas, and it's not for all integration purposes to F&O, but in some cases, if you have at least a one-to-one relationship with the table inside of Dataverse, exposing that as an API is a much easier. And to be frank, like the OData API is not extremely performant. It is the issue is also like ODatas are just not denormalized at all. So it's very complicated. When you want to write something, you have to kind of have a relationship with 25 different tables, and that's where I think the microarchitecture comes into play, where we're now having all of these microservices that are business purposed for inventory service, and that's, I think, where we're looking at. And when I talked to a customer we were selling to, that was one of it's like, what's your API first architecture? And I was thinking about it's like all of these new microservices is really just an API layered for specific business processes, kind of building on top of that.
Yeah, and it's offsetting the performance needs of the ERP, the system of record, is really cool. I mean, a lot of these services, visibility service being one, a lot of these built on Dataverse as well. My take as well on Dataverse and Power Apps and the whole low-code platform is that it's a good, except from just being a good sales tool, because really cool, like doing demos off that platform, and it makes it easier to explain the data model and the business processes, because you can attach to the entities from F&O using Power Automate. So that's a really good tool for coming into and understanding the business process, but not really going into the complexity of ERP, right? As long as you understand what purpose each system will fulfill. That's where really the complexity comes in. If you understand that sales or CRM has this purpose over here, and you can have a customer, you can have an account in CRM. It can be a customer, it can become a customer, it can be something else. But when it becomes an actual billable customer, that's when it needs some more rigid information and structure over here in ERP, like an invoicing address. And as long as you understand the purposes of these two different systems, then for me, Dataverse and the Power Platform and the low-code platform, really, they can both combine and extend each other's strengths.
We're moving into this kind of complex architecture because we've done the concessions on the applications, right?
Yeah.
I think it was extremely brave to end life of two very, very popular applications like SL and GP. We, from a Nordic perspective, was really happy, right? It's all the systems that we've been working on is the one that they will bring forth, right? and both the Business Central now and Finance and Operations. I mean, the amount of change that has happened and the kind of to the customer's detriment maybe, but the gusto of the product team of actually doing these changes is bettering the product. I've seen some of our competitors like keeping the same IP, right? Imagine the architecture if we had 4 different ERP solutions now, and everybody had to invest in building cloud solutions, and the kind of muddy which is best for this industry, and there's another one for this industry. So consolidating this as we're doing now is just amazing.
Yeah.
And also another thing I think from an architecture perspective is if you have a single tenant solution, you don't have to go industry vertical for all industries. We go deep in some areas, but then we have the ISVs, and I'm going to name drop some of our ISVs because I really, really have a great success. Like Extension is excellent. And there's to extended that as well, and then also Adeaka for the professional industries. If you need that on top of it, it is so good to extend it for some of the features that we're lacking inside of professional services and logistics, or for Anata if you have a like post production and you have a device. If you need to maintain that, there's also to increase the Dynarent solutions for renting. And they are bringing that industry value, and we have to bring that into the mix if we want to compete with some of the other solutions that are out there. For instance, IFS on the lifecycle maintenance of the assets and doing these things. But that's kind of how our go-to-market strategy is. And we're not going to solve everything inside of the solution and be the one take all. But with the partners, like that's when we really bring the industry value.
That's where the depth comes into the vertical industries, right? Where you have the ISVs to increase our Nordic colleagues, right? So I'm really understanding a vertical and building extensions on top of it and becoming like a product team. I've seen a number of extensions for ISVs as well that really work well. Coming from 2012, 2009, I was like, okay, how is this going to work? How is the extension modeling? But it's really been impressive to see, as you say, over the course of years. And especially since the go live, there are customers that went live on AX7 that are now live on 365. That's even more impressive, like going through upgrade from an actual live production system, right? Going up 2012, you have the upgrade story. You can always like re-implement. That's cool. But your people that were live on AX7, which are now on like version 29, that's really cool.
Yeah, and that's the evergreen story, right?
Yeah. Yes, and also one of the things that I've been raising a bit as well is that as well as you are leaving ISVs to take care of these verticals and these specific businesses. What I also think is a good thing, and I've argued with Gustav a bit about this, is that all of the sort of smallest parts, the least common denominators, like the basic electronic reporting framework and so on, all of those things are things that Microsoft is actually building and enhancing, because those are the ones that everyone needs. Almost everyone, I mean, say 70, 80, 90% can probably get along with those basic features. There are, of course, those who have very, very special needs, or that you have, for instance, say that you have a customer that has a lot of companies, so they can get an enhanced experience with scaling out and using an ISV for those kind of things. But most of it, if it comes to like tax reporting and so on, that's something that you shouldn't even have to invent, because that should probably just be a part
regulatory
of the
feature. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no one can get out of that. So you should probably have that as a base feature everywhere.
Yeah.
There's some countries that we don't support that we have really good ISVs for, so like Chile and I think Thailand and some other geolocations that we can deliver these solutions on. But they're also refactoring their solutions now to be on a much easier framework, and they're going to support that on that new framework, and I think that's interesting. But there's one also a very good aspect of the architecture argument, right? Because from a risk perspective, right? These new multi-tenant solutions saying they're industry and they're doing everything for everybody. I think it's this. We have a sort of like a a really important type of person in Norway with the ERP. He's like the ERP god of Norway. He's called Bojot Christensen. And he talks about something called process dialects. And I really love that term. Like the process dialect for each company is different. Like the special sauce, I think Eric Kimberling referenced it throughout, the special sauce of each company. And how are we going to get that value into the solution? And how are you getting closer to that? So Adeaka solves the professional services one way. To Increase has another flavor for architecture, construction, engineering. Extension has another way of looking at it, but it's still on the same base platform. And then if they need, and here's the kicker, right? If you need to have some changes made to the solution, like we have multiple layers of risk where you can get this agilely into the product as a standard, right? If you're a professional industries company and you say, Microsoft, go make this function, we put it on the backlog and it's going to be a long time before we can get it into the product because we have many customers who are going to use the same application, right? But if you go one step down and you go to an ISV, if there's an industry value of it, you can add it to that. Yeah. If that's not, you can do to the partner and go, they can buy the solution. That doesn't have to be published or anything, but they can own it. So you can commercially kind of offload that ownership off to somebody else who's going to maintain it. Or you can do it yourself.
Yeah, the experience with ISV companies running, I work a lot with commerce, so there's a lot of ISV needs there for handling product models, etc. And it's exactly like you say, you off-put some of the risk. Either you develop and maintain this on your own, but if you can get it from an ISV and they can put it into the platform, you get the experience from many other users using it. It's the same sales pitch as using one version, as using the same version for across. You're not alone in running your ERP.
Are you saying one version and I have one because you guys have the update, right? And that's one misconception that somebody's out there as well. And that's an argument for the multi-tenant area as well. If you have a bug fix that's in a multi-tenant, you have to wait for the monthly release.
Yeah.
But in a single tenant public cloud offering like we have, you can update every day. Yeah. We publish a new version of the software for the one version every day. If you go out and you have 250 updates inside of your log and there's one bug fix that you need, you tick that, but you get it chronologically up until that fix. So that's kind of the concept of the one version, right? You get the latest version every time you publish it. It's just a matter of where you are chronologically. And then you can be 3 months behind, basically. Up to 3 months behind, but somebody's like 2 to 3 months in head as well. So there's a 5-month flexibility where you can be on these versions, and that is just from a risk perspective.
That's really cool.
Major.
Yeah, I reacted when you said the special sauce of the process dialects. It was a really interesting saying, because I think that's where a lot of the conversations go right now, coming from that old, like, where you can build whatever you want. You can take AX 2012 and you can build your own ERP on top of it if you like. And that's the problem.
Exactly.
But it becomes your product. You have to maintain it. You have to own it. You don't get any updates. So everyone is clear. Now we want to go to this standard platform here. We want to run standard. So the problem here becomes, well, we have this process here that doesn't really fit. So from a technical architecture perspective, my perspective is like, yeah, you need to change the process. But that's where the complexity comes in, right? Because if that particular process is their special sauce, that's where you need to, you can't just attack it technically. You can't just say, well, if you don't change your process, then you will end up in this maintainability monster. You need to find a lot of different solutions. And that's where really the strength comes in as well, with Power Platform, all the different areas and the different aspects that we can use to solve a different problem or problem with the process. You don't have to solve it.
You can solve it temporarily with a low-code approach or a Power Automate flow. It is, let's do it this way until we kind of architecture it and done the proper things on the system of record.
Yeah.
And then you discontinue your app because it took 4 hours to make. It solved the business problem. It is a big value, but it's not an architecture component that we want to keep. So you kind of mature it through these base layer architecture models as well. You might move it into Dataverse and have it as a process there.
Absolutely.
And then sometime in the future, it makes sense to move it in. But I want to say one thing, and this is something that I've been preaching at our yearly conferences in Norway and our user groups. Make sure, if you're an F&O partner, right? We have these two different camps. Make sure that you get to know business and the Dataverse models now, because all our new products, if you followed up, if you're looking to intelligent order management, if you're looking at all of these, it's not services, it's actually applications that we're building. the sustainability manager, the visibility app as well is kind of based on that, but then there's another service on top of it. So all of these applications is going to get into this dataverse architecture, and you need that to be there. We can't have it's like a standard CRM crew come in and deliver intelligent order management, even if it's connected somehow to that process, but it's a logistical process. Same with field service, right? It was a mind change. People use the platform, but it's a totally different. It's not like it's customer service because
No, previously you could say that's CRM. We have other people, we have other experts for CRM. That's not going to fly anymore. You need to understand how it's connected and how it works. I mean, and you get a lot. I mean, for our other listeners here, you get a lot by just looking at how dual write is set up. Right, that's one of the best ways I use to show people what is dual write, how does it work. It's just here it is. You can actually see the connections, everything you get from standard like control. So it makes the explanation go much easier because this is F&O, we know F&O, or either we know F&O or we know sales. But there's the bridge, right? There you can explain it, and that's a good starting point to look at all the work that's already done.
And from ours as well, right? If you want to sell it, right, we want to go into the customers and we want to do component solutions and we want to break down. We don't want to do a rip and replace of an SAP implementation, though we do that sometimes. But we also want to be in there with an intelligent order management system because maybe the SAP solution is too costly. And then you can go in and you just sell that, and then you add some other components, and suddenly you have we need a warehouse management system, but boy, is that connected to some stuff in here. And then we want the project management system, but boy, is that connected to some other stuff. So there's always these dependency. Yeah. The product team is kind of splitting this up, not just from a licensing perspective, but also from a product perspective now, trying to move some of these aspects out so we can deliver them as point solutions that work cohesively. And that's what I think is kind of the future. And it will take some time before they kind of support each other, but they're delivering it as standalone products, and then they will, in the next release, maybe we'll add some standard integrations to other solutions. So the logistics area is going to blow up, and especially something that we expanded on, as you've seen, with supply chain insights and intelligent order management. So if you're into logistics, you have to know the
logistics and retail is my caveat here. So I'm absolutely on top of the IOM and the visibility service. Again, I'm coming from a technical ERP perspective, specifically F&O perspective, of course. So for me, it's more like offloading the performance, making sure that you can serve on hand, really. But I think it was interesting to see that the visibility app was one of the first apps where I saw mention of a third-party POS, because these are real scenarios where you need to kind of, you might buy a company that has a different POS than MPOS that you want to implement. Using visibility service is just a tool to make it easier for your multi-application architecture, which you normally have if you run F&O. You have a lot of different applications running out there. So I think visibility and that whole mindset is really, really cool, Mike. And the low-level service, which we don't get access to, it's nice to just easily set it up and offload all the on-hand calls that go towards a commerce normally.
Yeah, and you'll see the other services coming up as well. There's going to be a lot of these microservices that it works with our solutions out of the box, but you can really just pick it and then have it work as a microservice for another solution on an API basis, where you just do different calls. And it could be for the tax service, for instance, right? To do the tax calculation. A CRM system might not have that, but if you want to have that tax calculation end up correctly, you could use that service. Yeah,
I remember the old back in the day when we had a lot of customization. We had a rolling out in India. They had these really super complex tax rules that were regionally based, right? So you had a lot of heavy customization hours put into AX 2009, 2012. It was a lot of customization, and then they changed it to flat tax a couple of years back. So they had to roll back all of these hours and hours and hours. Thousands of billable hours went into that work. So by just offsetting that into that particular logic, offsetting it into a microservices, that's a fantastic decision to make, I would say.
Yeah, and there were some geolocations right there. But India is definitely one of them. You have
Brazil,
China, Russia, Brazil, India, and also the Italy. Tax code is also quite complex.
Pretty complex, yeah.
But now it's a service, and it's something that we will support, and you'll see that also in the I'm not sure if you're using that, but the electronic invoicing service. That's also going to support all of these APIs that are standard for the different countries, so that we can kind of just tag on these standard APIs that we expect them to be compliant with, or the formats that are compliant with the regional requirement. And the services are then published in and can really scale up, because that's also an issue, right? How fast can we get the invoices out?
Yeah, cool. You had mentioned something that you were frustrated with ERP implementations now. Just want to catch that when you mentioned something to you, I think, about being frustrated with specific ERP implementations for some reason. I'm not sure, but what the biggest problem that some ERP implementations do today?
A couple of things. I think some of them are underutilizing the features and functions in the applications and implementing very, very narrow type of scoped implementations. And one of the issues is, of course, the customer still looks at it like the traditional ERP implementation. Like when we're getting to the goal line, that's the go live, and that's really how we're going to, like, you have to switch it, and the mentality has to be like you're getting to the starting line. And that's when you're going to, that's just the first mindset, part of it. It's just like you're warming up, and this is going to be something, it's not a marathon. It's like, it is the lifelong run. You're Forrest Gump, just
keep running,
getting that first meter, right? So just keep running. That's how you're going to get it. Yeah. And then you have to look at the implementation extensibility of it. So I think from our solution, from the platform's perspective, continuous innovation is a big part of it, and it's something that all the new cloud solutions is. I just think that our solution and the way that we've architected it is a better fit. I think all the customers need some type of special sauce in it, and you'll see a whiplash coming from the multi-tenant implementations. And the only way they can go, to the detriment of these multi-tenant customers, is on a private cloud implementation where that cost of IT suddenly skyrockets. So, we should be really proud about the platform that we're on.
Wise words, continuous innovation. That's something, the mindset to live by, and a lifelong run, Johan. That's something to look forward to, right?
Yeah, we call it a marathon, but it's the Forrest Gump type of approach. You have to think about it. Yeah,
I usually tell the customers that there is a difference between a project and a product.
Yeah.
The difference is that the project has an end date. A product does not have an end date. So
that's a good one. Even better.
Very nice.
Yep. There is actually a book about this. I don't have it right now, but I can add a link in the show notes, that is called Project versus Product or something like that. That describes the differences between how to think about the different scenarios.
Yeah, it's a good quote. We're going to steal it.
Yep.
Very good. Product versus projects. If you're ever in doubt, or you hear the word multi-tenant in a compete situation, hook me up on LinkedIn. That's where you are, and I'll give you some good arguments.
That's great. Yes. Thanks, Fredrik.
That's good. And with that, I think we will have to thank Fredrik for today. We are hoping to get you back sometime, but for today, thank you very much for being able to join us and discussing things. It's always fun to have people with opinions, as I said before. So hoping to get you back again, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.